with that, I'll jump in and get going. And I would invite my co-presenters, Sonia and others, to do the thing if you want. So to begin with, we're gonna get into intersection design now. So we did cross sections, and now we're gonna look at what are some of the other tools that we think about to facilitate safer crossing for all users to better manage vehicle speeds. And these are some non-motorized user type considerations, similar to what we said with performance measures before. But this ties directly back to the transportation hierarchy that we did yesterday, in that we're going to ask you to prioritize the most vulnerable users first. That's the safety component. Pamela was asking a question on the cross-section design. Where did you start? Did you start in the middle and then work out? Did you figure out the lanes first, and then whatever is left I can work with for the pedestrians? That works actually in Mora because it's huge. It's 150 feet. But just as often as having the extra space, we're in constrained rights of way. You know, like there are some MnDOT facilities that are like 66 feet through a town, and it doesn't all fit. And so how do you make it all fit? And so the guidance is to start from the outside in. So you're in a urban commercial setting. Pedestrians and bicycles have a higher relative priority than does the vehicle traffic. So it doesn't make sense that you would start by figuring out your lanes. First, you figure out what goes on the outside, and then you go in.
If anyone can send in any of Todd Grugel's trainings, starting at the outside in, also helps it, helps us not forget about that sidewalk space that's in Todd's trainings. That is what ends up happening from an elevation perspective. It's kind of, you start at the middle and you work your way out, and then you go, oh, shoot.
Yep, we already talked about vehicle speeds. We already talked about having larger buffer for both people walking and people biking. And don't stop at the intersections. That's the hardest part. I brought up earlier, to somebody, NACTO, which is the city equivalent of the AASHTO guidance. So it's National Association of City Transportation Officials, has a whole design manual called Don't Give Up at the Intersections. And it's like thousands of pages dedicated to specific intersection treatments. I don't have a copy here, but it's a really good reference that you can get online.
You know, Dan, I'm a traffic engineer, right? I help people cross the street. That's what I tell my kids anyways. And I've had a lot of people, as we've been doing different trainings in different spaces over the years, I've had a lot of people tell me, sometimes doing nothing is okay. Sometimes it's okay. Sometimes they're not wrong. Sometimes there's an element of I did nothing, which is effectively I buried my head in the sand, right? So a couple of examples that people have told me about, they have a trail that comes up to a crossing, whether it's at an intersection or a mid-block, and they went, this is hard. I'm gonna do nothing. And then the trail picks up on the other side and continues. Was that really the right decision? Because that one feels to me like it got hard and we just like stepped back and kind of walked away from it. There are things that we can do, which is probably some of the things that Dan's gonna walk through. There are things within FHWA that has some proven safety countermeasures that can help us do what is the right thing. But sometimes it's a little bit harder than others. That's true.
Has anyone ever biked through one of those where you're on your trail, you're going, and then you get to a busy intersection and you're like, whoa, where did my bike facility go? Ah, there's cars. It's not comfortable. But it happens a lot. Vehicle design considerations. This is a slide that didn't have a home, but we put it in here. When you think about designing intersections, one of the big things that we always wrestle with is, well, we gotta run the turning templates and we gotta make sure that trucks can turn. And that's not wrong. But what we're encouraging you to do is think about both the design vehicle and the control vehicle. Your semi-trailer tractor isn't the design vehicle in most cases. It is at Highway 23 intersection here in Mora, but probably not at the other intersections, right? Instead, our design vehicle is what? School bus, fire truck, that sort of thing, with the control vehicle being probably not a tractor trailer, probably, I don't know, a WD-62. I'm not a engineering auto turn running type of person, but the point being is that we don't have all types of vehicles turning at every intersection. So we should stop designing it that way if it comes at the risk of the other modes. This is a fun slide. So this is a vehicle centric design, and it's this big, this kind of looks like the Highway 15, 12 that we walked yesterday, right? This big giant, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7, 8 lanes of vehicle traffic. You get 3 rights. If I'm a pedestrian here and I wanna go there, that's like 100 yards. That's like a football field. That we're expecting somebody to cross in the 27 seconds they get of cross time on the signal. Is that a balanced design? Is that right size? Maybe. I mean, we don't know the traffic volumes. I do. This is actually, that's 5 headquarters right here. So this is Penn Avenue and 77th Street and a right parallel to Highway 494 in the Twin Cities. But yeah, huge intersection that could be right side. When do we really need dual left turns, by the way? Like, is that?
Dan, I got it. Okay. I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah.
Let's talk through this.
Okay, a couple of rules of thumb, turn lanes. I've always heard 300 cars a day when you need a singular turn lane. And then the other rule of thumb that I've always heard, 600 cars a day turning is when you need your second turn lane. Okay, those are rules of thumb, though, right? Those aren't like hard and fast guidelines, which means if you're expecting 302 cars in that peak hour, I don't think that means 2 left turn lanes. I've seen a handful of layouts now that show that 302, and we're looking at it going, why do we need 2 left turn lanes? So there becomes some of that balance and give and take also on when that second turn lane is needed. So we've talked about it in a different complete street session too, where you have an intersection, it's got 2 through lanes, and so they just didn't put in the third crossing. Well, why? I mean, some people will say, well, because there's the 2 turn lanes, and that creates conflict. Okay, let's talk through that. In this case, I guess we don't have any dual rights, but I've seen a lot of intersections that just keep growing. You've got 2 turn lanes in every single approach, then you add, the 2 right turn lanes, and so if you keep using that, you can't get a crossing at any intersection. Well, now we've got a different problem. So thinking through what are those true safety concerns that we would have out there to not have a turn or a crosswalk marking is something that we really need to be considerate and aware of what we're thinking through.
Hey, to be clear, sometimes we need turn lanes. We know that, right? But
Yeah, and sometimes we need 2 of them.
8 lanes of traffic to cross here in suburban context.
I'm just saying, sometimes it's not at 302 cars turning left in a peak hour doesn't mean 2 turnings.
So if that's a vehicle centric design, here's an example of what might be a more balanced complete streets type of design. So I live in Richfield. I've done a lot of work in Richfield. So this is another Richfield example. Apologies for that. This is Portland Avenue, which is a county facility. Kind of a goofy design. I wouldn't do it this way again necessarily, but one of the features that you see are these really short, stubby medians with these little tiny turn lane thingies. I'll tell you that those tiny turn lane thingies don't really work for turn lanes. Like if there are 2 vehicles stacking and kind of your back end sticks out and it causes issues. But when this went in, I talked to the city transportation engineer, and he told me about a call that he got. And the call was, I really hate your design on Portland. Oh yeah, how come? Well, you got those little nubby medians in, and every time I go by them, I have to slow down. I don't like that. And then the city transportation engineer goes, yes, and then the person, oh, I get it. Like, oh, okay, yeah. That was intentional. So those are an idea that, again, I wouldn't do those medians the same way again because they're weird. But that was, skinny roads, wide nodes. That was an idea of can we do things to better manage vehicle speeds and to design a facility that has an actual operating speed that matches what we wanted it to match. So yeah, that's what I'm there. There's a lot of other things going on in this quarter that we need to do. So what I got next is a handful of just example treatments. These are all very urban context sensitive because that's where we kind of have a lot of the pedestrian crossings, but don't give up in the more rural areas, especially like in natural areas. Oftentimes there is a need to do something. But with that, either just not all inclusive, but just a handful of kind of things that I personally have worked on and are tools that we might do in our case study. So roundabout, there are 3 official sizes now, I guess. I'm an engineer, but we have our conventional roundabouts, we have compact roundabouts, and we have mini roundabouts. This is a mini roundabout, so it fits in the same footprint as like a standard intersection. It's goofy, a little weird. Trucks have to go over the apron, trucks and buses, but and in some context settings, this is a good treatment.
You know, again, I don't know where I was, but somebody was recently telling a story about a mini roundabout going in somewhere. And the stakeholder that we were working with said, a mini roundabout? I don't want a mini thing. I want a regular roundabout that's smaller. So they came up with the word compact.
And sometimes we have traffic signals. Sometimes that's the right tool. And so particularly in cases where there are existing traffic signals and we're not changing the geometrics, we know that that's likely to stay. Can we do things with the traffic signals to make it work better? Anybody heard of LPI?
Yeah, who knows what that acronym that isn't, that is.
Yeah, leading pedestrian interval. So it's pretty simple. The light stays red, the walk sign comes on, and you get like 5 seconds to get halfway out into the lane before the drivers next to you get green. So it's a pedestrian safety improvement that gives people walking across the street better.
Nothing's perfect, right? So also, if you are in an ADA category, specifically one that doesn't have a lot of vision, LPIs can still be challenging. So at a traditional intersection, a signalized intersection like this, you're listening for the one direction of traffic to be going, and then you're listening for the opposing direction of traffic so that you can kind of get your bearings and understand the flow at the intersection and know when it's okay to cross. Well, now if you have an LPI in there, that cue to someone without vision is different. So we have to have the APS, but someone with low vision or blind will probably still wait for the vehicles to start moving, because that's how they know they have confidence that someone for sure is gonna stop for them or that they're walking in the right direction. So nothing's ever gonna be perfect for everybody, but having in some of those other tools to help is still gonna be appropriate. And then making sure that we're still timing it for that full distance is gonna be critical.
Median, so access management, I think that came up in for the case study example. Pretty straightforward, right? You can do a raised median in the center, and that effectively closes off the intersecting streets so that it's right in, right out only. And what that does is that the traditional intersection has 36 conflict points, right? Of places where you have potential exposure for a crash. It cuts it in half. So by definition, you created a safety improvement. There are trade-offs, right? So if you're in a neighborhood and there's an intersected street and we're going to close a median, make it right in, right out, you're going to have to go tell that story to the people who live on that street as to why they can't take a left to get to the grocery store. And that story might be, hey, you're going to take a right and go down to the compact roundabout, maybe U-turn, it will be faster than it was, or whatever. But you got to have that story. Pedestrian medians, this is the side view of that little nubby one that I showed you in a few slides ago. So one of the features, somebody asked in Team Edgerton yesterday on the field walk about the pedestrian median design. One of the features that's different is you try to get the note so that you've got a little bit of concrete with a sign on it in your way to protect you from a turning vehicle, and that is a refuge. This is intuitive, but with a pedestrian median, it simplifies the crossing such that you only have to cross one direction of traffic at a time, right? So if it's a busy roadway, you can look just that way, cross into the middle with your stroller, stop, and then reset and look the other way. So it's a staged crossing, and still be a safety improvement for pedestrians. Okay, lights and flashy things are great. Please stop going to your public meetings and saying, I know that's what they're called. I know it's different than a quick button light, but we don't need to do that in public, and don't ever say stop either.
Verusa, just because we can make it an acronym doesn't mean we always have to.
But flashing lights are one of the tools in the toolbox. Sonia, yesterday we were talking about rollway. This is one of the things that we can do at roundabout crossings to make it work a little bit better for people crossing at roundabouts. It's also a really good tool for mid-block crossings, or in cases where, like I had a couple of slides ago, if you do a raised median as access management, and you're going to close that crossing to vehicle traffic, you can still keep it open for pedestrians and do something like this mid-block to let cars know that they should expect that.
These are attention grabbing device, right? So they're flashing at you to wake you up to let you know that there's someone there. They're not red, they are flashing yellow, so they are just a warning to let you know someone's there.
And there have been studies, it's something like, depending on context, like 60% increase in driver compliance for stop.
Is there a speed limit where those RRFBs, since I'm gonna keep using that acronym, Dan, that they are more effective and less effective at? Yes, there are. There is a table. Do you have that table in this slideshow? Okay. So improvement safety countermeasures, they also have kind of a, how to select controls or how to select countermeasures at uncontrolled crossing locations. And so the threshold where they stop recommending RRFBs is about 45 miles and faster. Maybe, so usually maybe at that 40 and lower sort of a threshold, and then probably you're getting to hot, right? Probably. There is another tool that picks up at those higher speed area.
Is high.
Intensity activated crossing something or other.
It's a signal system.
Pedestrian hybrid beacon is really what it is.
Okay, moving on, so bump outs. I'm sure many of you are familiar with bump outs or curb extensions. Essentially, they work particularly well in places where there's a wide shoulder or parking lane. You trade that space, that would be the parking lane or an extension of your pedestrian area out, and what it does is shortens the crossing distance. If done right, you can do other things. You can put, public art, you can plant it, you can have a rain garden in it. So there are kind of stacking up some of those other benefits that make sense. I mentioned this earlier, but I started pitching them as the bump out is the default condition. Like we're just going to reclaim that space for boulevard, and then we're going to put in a parking bay where it's needed. So it's just sort of inverting that thinking around. If that makes any sense, it does in my head.
It's something that adds that friction. We were talking about self-enforcing roadways. This is another tool to add that friction to make it feel like you want to drive slower. I would advise talking to your maintenance people earlier than later on this one. There's a couple of different designs and ways that you can treat that return and how it connects back to the rest of the space. There might be ways that you want to delineate it and denote it vertically differently so that plow operators won't run into the curb. That can be very, very jarring.
So we're just scratching the surface here. There are literally dozens of other design treatments. The resource that we have from FHWA has a lot of them, with a lot of before and after study that talks about their application and their crash modification factor. So we'll definitely take a look. Always involve maintenance, always involve traffic in your discussions to make sure you don't go out and tell the community we're going to do something really cool and we just can't.
Dan, I want to talk about public art real quick. I think public art is a fascinating one. I'm an engineer. I don't really understand art, not gonna lie. I have not always understood landscape either. My first boss called it pretty little growy things. That's where we started. I've gotten to know Carol's off. I've gotten to understand how these things really matter. I've paid attention to when I've traveled for work. I went to Denver for a conference, and there's a lot of public art in Denver, and specifically in the space that I was. And I have a different respect for it because it's another element that creates that inviting space that you want to be in. So I think public art has a space for discussions too.
Public art, sidewalk cafes, your picnic table and more on all that kind of stuff. Lets you know that this is a space that you're welcome. Okay, I'm not going to go a whole lot into transit because this could be its own training session, but when you've got fixed route transit in particular, it comes with its own set of design treatments, and there are all kinds of really cool things that people are starting to do that really enhance that experience. So this is a picture of an arterial BRT stop. So that this is Metro Transit in the Twin Cities is spending a lot of effort in upgrading their existing bus network to this arterial BRT network. What it is it's intended to be more of a train-like experience, but on a bus. So for instance, you have the pylon on the left of the screen has real-time trip information. So you don't have to look at the placard to figure out when you think the next bus is going to come. It's real-time. Here's your bus can be here in 5 minutes. You have a ticket machine and vendor so that you pay your fare ahead of time. So you're not slowing up traffic behind the bus while you get in and try to come out, change and dump it into the thing. So it's got a shelter, which has heating lamps above, because we live in Minnesota. It's got meter boarding curb. So the curb is a little higher, it's like a 10-inch curb, and the bus has like a hydraulic thing, so it just like go wheelchair can roll right on instead of having to lift the thing up. All of it is designed to make it easier to ride the bus and also to make it so the bus moves faster and isn't blocking traffic with dwell time as long. So transit comes with its own, special set of considerations.